Ladies and gentlemen, friends, my colleagues and I sincerely thank you. Thank you for being with us here today. Now, does anyone know what a timepiece has anything to do with navigating around the world? Okay, friendly warning, this might be a little bit dry, so if I lose you for a while, it's okay. We'll see each other at the reception later. So before the mid-18th century, people measured latitude and longitude of their position using a sextant. This was done looking through the sights of the device and measuring the highest angle of the sun at local noontime, or taking reference from star constellations in the sky, in the night sky. It was a brilliant invention, but there were issues. Because the further one travels away from the equator, finding the exact moment when the sun is at its maximum height is harder because the sun doesn't rise up that high in the sky. Now, when measuring latitude, the margin of error is not so big a deal. But when measuring longitude, one could be up to 10 nautical miles off, or plus minus 18 to 19 kilometers wrong. At this range of error, this frequently put sailors at high risk of straying off course and all sorts of kind of maritime disasters, such as striking reefs and getting lost in open seas. And this was called the longitude problem, the inability to accurately determine a ship's east-west position at sea. Now, the solution was to have a clock on board the ship that was synchronized to the longitude of home base. But back then, the most accurate timekeepers were pendulum clocks. They were very accurate on land. They lose plus or minus 1 minute per day, compared with plus minus 15 minutes versus its predecessors. And pendulum clocks did not wear out as fast as the predecessors. It takes about a 25 centimeter pendulum 1 second to complete a full back and forth cycle. But on board a ship in choppy seas, this otherwise accurate timing of a pendulum on land became utterly useless on board a ship because of the rocking and movement while at sea. Then things changed dramatically when a man named John Harrison invented a chronometer. A chronometer doesn't only just tell time of day, but its very name, chronometer, means time meter. That means it's made to keep accurate time. Now, John Harrison was a carpenter, a joiner, and a clockmaker, and he made a clock that could keep time so accurately while in motion that it could withstand the effects of the rocking on board ships while at sea. While other clocks lost time about 1 minute per day, his chronometer lost 1 second per month. He solved the critical longitude problem and saved lots of lives that might otherwise have been lost at sea. Okay. Are you guys still with me? How many would like to know how to measure the position at sea using a sextant and chronometer? Okay, I see enough hands, so I'll soldier on. Okay, wherever you are, take a note of the moment of local noontime. Means by watching and tracking the movement of the sun rising until the sky at its peak, catch it at its peak, and note that local noontime. Then look at the clock that is synchronized with home base and calculate the difference between your local noontime and your home base time. Now, you can slice the Earth into 360 degrees. And the Earth rotates 24 hours, which means every 1 degree separation is 4 minutes. Okay, so with this simple ratio, you look at the time difference of your home base clock versus your local noon time, and you do some simple arithmetic. And of course, sailors back then learned how to count by more than smaller intervals than just 4 minutes, by about 1 degree. Essentially, the invention of the chronometer improved the margin of error from plus minus 10 nautical miles to 2 nautical miles. And this was game-changing for those times. So it dramatically improved the safety of long-distance seafaring and opened new trade routes and spurred the growth of global trade of goods. So this is one example of innovation, or geo-innovation, that changed the world. And today, the concept of John Hamilton's chronometer has been miniaturized into wristwatches and siliconized into smartwatches and made into consumer lifestyle devices. But the initial use case was an industrial one, which spurred the growth of international trade. Recently, there was an article in The Economist about the effects of on civilian life in Russia after 4 years of war with Ukraine. Now, although civilian life in Russia had not been as badly impacted as in Ukraine, some things still changed for people there. For instance, consumer navigation apps no longer work in Russia because, I quote, defense systems intended to foil Ukrainian drone attacks also confuse the sat-navs of cars in Moscow and other cities. This spoofing can make GPS devices think they are 50 kilometers from the actual location. So drivers must study routes in advance, use paper maps, or ask for directions. Technology has its brittleness. The invention and application of sat-navs and GPS systems have been disrupted. And that is why the human spirit is invaluable for empowering a community that is resilient and future-ready. I'm not suggesting that we go back to the 1700s and start reproducing the use of sextants and timepieces. But the thing to remember is the pioneering spirit of innovators like John Harrison and the seafarers that his invention helped. In our own small way, this is what Esri and my colleagues at Bal State Geospatial do, supporting pioneering efforts to help people understand geography, connecting places and people to arrive at better understandings of geology, topology in geography, and relationships between places and people in our community by enabling professionals like you. And there are other amazing stories of pioneering efforts within the Bal State story and the Singapore story, which we can't go in today, but Esri and my colleagues have been privileged to support and be part of the community of game changers like you. Which brings us back to today, because the innovations and impact we've seen today, that is why we're celebrating how your human spirit is expressed through your energy and creativity and commitment. The use cases shared today are not consumer stories, but without them, the game of life for our community would be very different. They are about work that is so fundamental to the life that our communities depend on. For example, LTA, carefully curating GIS layers dutifully, bridging the knowledge gap, and bringing the capabilities of GIS closer to the users across the value chain of their work. In HDB, radically improving turnaround time from 4 days to 5 minutes, kind of like what John Harrison achieved. From 4 days to 5 minutes using automation with means that can scale. And for BTO homes, something that matters so much to people. And URA, enabling collaboration between lead agencies and stakeholders to make life more painless so that disruption to our pace of life is minimized. And I do like the word coined by, I'm told it's coined by Vijay Das, I do like the word infra shadows. Besides the innovation, the work of the teams in today's presentations also involve a great deal of collaboration. I remember a friend sharing a thought out loud with me. It would be good to avoid having our centers of excellence become silos of excellence. And many times, I have heard users tell me something special happens when two colleagues stand side by side looking at the GIS. They see their own layers with renewed understanding when overlaid with another colleague's layers. And today's presentations have given us a window into the work of professionals and teams who meet regularly with each other to combine business and spatial understanding to collaborate more effectively. It's like what Wee Bing mentioned just now as a change of mindset. All roles in all organizations have interdependencies on each other. And by collaborating through the GIS, teams of business users can become more aware of the implications of the output from team members upstream, and the consequences downstream from them. Most people are not afraid of work, but they hate meaningless work. So to be more aware of the interdependence between people upstream and downstream from them, to the reasonable person, this kind of better understanding enriches the meaning of work. Going alone may be faster, and collaboration may be costly and frustrating at times, but the alternative is far more costly. A friend or someone I know, he's no longer with us, the late Jeff Peters, senior director at Esri, shared this quote: "Collaboration happens at the speed of trust." But Jeff was someone who believed strongly in collaboration and wanted to build trust. So I would like to add on this to his quote and say that trust is also built at the speed of collaboration. We need to keep on collaborating to have any chance of building trust. Like Wishan mentioned this morning, build a better together. And so before I close, my colleagues and I would also like to encourage you to continue to innovate, whether you came here today to receive an award or not. See, children don't need a PhD to learn how to play. Kids learn skills through play. Even animals like lion cubs play because that's how they practice for life, for real life, and grow to become effective hunters. Where geodata and GIS is a representation of the real world, GIS professionals also need a space to test out and shape ideas into actionable intent so as to engage the real world. Of course, there are different names for it. Some of you call it Innovation Lab, or Ideas Lab, or Digital Lab. Wheeling called it a Geo Experience Lab this morning. But essentially, it's an environment where we can let new data and new tools interact with existing data and existing tools, or try out new ways, including machine learning and geo-AI models and agents, to discover what kinds of new combinations work well and doesn't, so that we can choose what to keep and what to drop with better confidence. And the organizations that have started this, like LTA and URA, just to name a couple, for those who have started this, they have not stopped because they understand this is a journey. Technological innovation is one thing, but technology has competence but limited comprehension. Technology may be able to find linkages, but it cannot really understand relationships. And that's why it can be brittle and fragile in surprising ways. So the human spirit will always be more fundamental than technology. And once again, this is the spirit and attitude that we are celebrating today. With every slide or message or conclusion in our presenter's slide, there was an act of choice and effort and inspiration by a team of collaborators. So in closing, at the conversations you will have with each other later on today, let's keep inspiring each other and help each other be better prepared for the future through curiosity, experimentation, passion, and determination, so that when circumstances change and disruption is thrown at us again, we can absorb failures and adapt. Update our happiness level while still staying grounded to nurture anti-fragile, thriving communities. Thank you.